The Lord Be With You podcast show, also known as Christian Fandom Geek on YouTube, is a Red 5 show, also affiliated with Fandom Collective. So, enjoy the show, and the Force will be with you very soon on the Lord Be With You podcast show.
This is where the fun begins.
I'd sit this one out, Cap.
I don't see how I can.
These guys come from legend. They're basically gods.
There's only one God, man. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
From the wrestling part of the show now, we're going to be talking now about Marvel. Omar, look, on the show, you're known as a font of knowledge, cosmic wizardry in lore, canon, and Star Wars. you knew I'd get it in there. You must have known. Okay, man. So obviously we've had Eternals come out recently.
Yeah.
I was really hyped about Eternals, and then I kind of read a lot of reviews, and it's kind of put me off. If I'm being honest, it's kind of hang on a minute, am I paying a ticket to go watch this? Because it's got portrayed to me as a kind of giant National Geographic version of a Marvel film that doesn't really connect with main continuity. It's a bit of a side concomitant sort of project, and it's kind of put me off, so I went to see Dune instead.
Okay.
By the way, Dune was amazing. If anyone's thinking at home, should I go and see Dune, go and see it. It's a really good film. Whether you've read the book or not, it's a really good film. Really good film. So what do you think about Marvel at the moment? What's going on with Marvel? It almost comes across like they're really relying on Sony, if I'm being honest. And this has surprised me, because I would have thought it would have been the other way around, because I know Sony was struggling a few years ago. They really were. But it almost seems like Marvel really needs Sony at the moment with the Spider-Man multiverse storyline.
I don't think it's so much that they're relying on Sony. I just think that they're teeing things up. Like, we didn't know that it was the Infinity Saga until we knew it was the Infinity Saga. Yeah. So I think what they're doing now is that there is more kind of through lines happening in the Marvel Cinematic Universe than there was through the Infinity Saga, because we have, and I think the era we're in now is just the tee up. We're watching the undercard before the main event.
Wrestling talk. Wrestling jargon.
Yeah, that's what I think we're looking at right now. I mean, I think we've had a couple of mid-tier films. I haven't seen Eternals yet myself, but I mean, I watched Shang-Chi a couple of days ago.
I'm going to watch that in the next few days. What did you think of that, though? Just without spoiling it.
I really, really enjoyed it. I think it was a really good film. I think it really is like a kind of a really good showcase of a kind of a different character in a different way, kind of leaning into kind of Chinese mythology and stuff like that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's, again, when you see the post-credit scene, you can see that they're teeing something up. You can see in Loki, the TV series, they're teeing something up. Black Widow and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, they're teeing something up. You can see that. You can see that we've got a whole thing. We've got the whole Kang thing. So we've got a multiverse thing going on that should culminate in either Far From what's it called now? No Way Home and
Spider-Man.
Doctor Strange 2.
Yeah,
you can see that we can see that's probably going to be the main through line. But yet we also can see that the contest is around. So we're looking at a possible kind of Avengers versus Dark Avengers / Thunderbolts type.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
So, you know, I mean, there's
break that down for us, Marvel. Omar, I called you Marvel. Omar, break that down for us, like what you just said. Thunderbolts, Dark Avengers. Break that down for the guys at home that will be listening, because I know they'll come across this stream and they will listen. Break that down for us.
Well, you got obviously the Avengers. That's the heroes, and then you have kind of a darker version of them. Not necessarily that they're villains, but they go a little bit further than the Avengers would ever go.
Yeah.
Thunderbolts originally is a very interesting story about how they were actually villains that were posing as heroes, but the world loved them so much that they actually started to try be the heroes that they were trying to portray, which is
That's an
quite an
interesting
interesting one.
story.
I mean, in the 90s, that's one, like, Thunderbolts issue 1 was one of the most shocking things ever, because at the time, the Avengers, Fantastic Four, were all missing on Earth, and a new team, the Thunderbolts, were kind of like marketed as like a new team to kind of carry the banner. But then the final page, you found out that they were all really the masters of evil. So it was absolutely like kind of a mind-blowing concept to know that they were like actually established villains, actually taking on these kind of heroic roles, but trying to do evil things, but then eventually becoming the heroes that everyone thought they were. Later on, the Thunderbolts was seen as kind of like a Black Ops like team of Avengers, kind of almost kind of like a Suicide Squad style type deal. And I think that's kind of where the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going, with like a darker shade of the heroes. Like we've already seen John Walker as US Agent. We've seen Yelena from Black Widow. You can see her being connected with the Contessa. So we looks like we've seen a kind of a Dark Avengers or kind of a Thunderbolts team forming in kind of the more grounded side of the MCU. And
now, in terms of the heroes, in terms of the we talk about the motifs, the archetypes. Obviously, I think both of us are big fans of the Boy Scout archetype, and we saw that strong with Captain America. Obviously, it's not the only one, but like it's really strong. Black Falcon's taken over as a Captain America role. Do you think he can live up to it in the same way that they did with Steve Rogers? Because obviously Steve Rogers was a phenomenal, played by Chris Evans, was a phenomenal Captain America. And do you think that because obviously there is a trend towards making everything almost grey and trying to be very sophisticated, not play to the sort of tropes that we sort of got with a lot of the heroes. You think of Richard Donner Superman films in the 80s, for example. You knew who the good guy was, you knew who the villain was, and the good guy was rocking the good guy trope, and they played with it a little bit. Like, I mean, you had that sort of doppelganger Superman, where you had that where Superman went evil, but it wasn't really him. But it was Bizarro, wasn't it? But for the most part, they kept it like you knew that Superman was the good, and you knew that whoever was fighting Superman was the bad guy. Do you think they're coming away from that trope way too much, and they're trying to make everything grey?
I don't think it's too much, but I think the best villains are the ones that if you sat down with them, you would actually say, actually, you've got a point there. You made the way that you're probably going about it is wrong, but there is a point to it. Like, well, as a lifelong X-Men fan, just look at someone like Magneto. He's infinitely more interesting because you're like, actually, you know something. To an extent, you do actually have a point in what you're doing. You just do it in a terrorist type way, like I mean, if you even look at okay, I'm going to go into some dangerous ground now, but but just like how you see Thanos is an interesting character more because even more in the MCU rather than his comic book counterpart, because he had kind of an ideology that you can be like, oh, I can see where you're coming from. You're doing it in the wrong way, but I can see where you're coming from. Other than when you see Darkseid in the Snyder cut or the original cut, I don't care, where it's just, I just want the anti-life equation. I got beaten up so bad on the planet that I forgot where I left the anti-life equation. Absolutely stupid. Like, he wasn't a compelling villain. Steppenwolf wasn't a compelling villain. You didn't know anything, the inner logic of why he was doing it. He was just doing it to get back in the good graces of Darkseid.
Yeah, he was like a lapdog, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was like, who cares? But when you looked at how Thanos was portrayed, you could say that's a grey area, but it was just like, okay, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All the best villains, if you can see where they're coming from, and there's kind of an element where you can be like, okay, I see Like, no villain thinks they're a villain.
Thanks for playing part 1 of our Marvel special. Get ready for part 2 soon on the Law Be With You podcast show, also known as Christian Fandom Geek on YouTube.